Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Kristen Archibald, and I'm one of the account executives here at Presdo. We're very excited you could join. We are presenting to you today from our office in Mountain View, California. And our speaker today is our very own founder and CEO of Presdo, Eric Lee. Prior to creating Presdo, Eric was a co-founder of LinkedIn, where he helped LinkedIn achieve a user base now reaching more than 400 million business professionals around the world. He is leveraging those same principles and experience to advance the technology at Presdo for events. So at this time, I'd like to turn it on over to Eric. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and enter those into the chat or the question box on the GoTo webinar panel. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll get all of your questions answered.
Well, hi everyone. Thanks, Kristen, and very happy to be speaking to people out there this morning and afternoon. We're going to talk about the relationship between marketing and events today. And the presentation that you're going to see today is going to be pretty high level. These are ideas that here at Presdo we've been ruminating on for some time, and we just wanted to share with you our thoughts about the impact that events can have on marketing, particularly in this era today of digital and digital tools, and in particular, what technology could be bringing to events and marketing in the future. So we want to kind of talk to you about this theme around the social economy today, and this is a term that we're trying to coin and to get some ideas and our vision around the social economy out there today. So I'm sure everyone here on this call knows about social media, and that's not what we're talking about today. We want to talk about the social economy, which are some other concepts that we want to espouse. And our idea around the social economy really kind of takes social media to the next level, and is really trying to dig deeper in terms of some of the concepts that originated with LinkedIn, but can really be extended, to how we work in business, especially today, around social concepts. And so for us, the social economy really evolves around kind of two things that are really important to us. One is rich data, and having information about the customers and prospects that all of us in our businesses deal with day in and day out. And then also the second concept really has to do with that rich data around user profiles. And knowing about our customers. And both of those concepts are really important when they work together. I think we've all experienced situations when we collect a lot of data about various things, but if they're not organized around profiles, we really can't do much with them. And we've been in situations where we have a lot of data, and they aren't actionable when they're not organized according to who created or who that data was about. Similarly, if we have user profiles, and I'm sure a lot of us have profiles about our customers in our CRM systems, and a lot of times though those profiles in the CRM systems may not have a lot of data associated with them, particularly when our salespeople are called upon to enter that information into those CRM systems. And so that situation is not very useful either. And so it's really the combination of having rich data, clearly defined user profiles that really brings the power of the social technology for our companies and our organizations. And that's what we really want to talk about in terms of the social economy today. So we all know that to to create successful customer relationships today, it's very essential to know them. And there was a famous set of TV commercials from Morgan Stanley a few years ago. I'm sure we all saw them, where the commercials were very warm, and they talked about how your financial advisors are almost part of your family. And there would be these commercials about that your advisor coming in and knowing your kids, knowing important members of the family. There was even one commercial that talked about the financial advisor being a part of your wedding, and giving a toast, and really illustrating the point of how people that we work with on a professional basis can really get to know us so well that they really become a friend or even a part of the family. And it's that kind of relationship that honestly we in business, whether we're the customer or we're the vendor, those are the kinds of relationships that we would like to have with each other. And those types of relationships are where the other party knows us better than we know our own situation, and can prescribe the right answers at the right time. And so the question is, how do we do that at scale, right? Businesses are always trying to grow their customer base and have as many customers as possible. And so how do we have that personal touch as we scale out our customer base? And so we argue that having knowledge about our customers is really centered around having the data about them and knowing them, and so that when we have conversations and discussions with our customers, with our prospects, we really know what their interests are, and we can tailor our conversations and our solutions to each and every customer in the right way. And so we wanted to just sort of talk about why events are important in B2B marketing. And this is a stat that is out there in the in the marketplace, and we thought we just wanted to pull this stat and talk about the importance of events, particularly in the sense of B2B marketing. And it is definitely the case that 2/3 of B2B marketers believe that in-person events are still the most effective marketing channel. So while today there is a lot happening on digital forms in terms of how you do marketing today to reach business customers, that whole idea around events, the experience of events and face-to-face interactions still remains the most important channel for how to develop relationships with customers. And this is another, I think, slide that is very interesting as well. This slide actually came from a study that Marketo did, and Marketo is a marketing automation company that many of you know. And so what they found was that in terms of the marketing budget and how companies spend their marketing dollars, events are a very big component of how people spend money to develop leads for their sales funnel. And so digital is a big part today, for sure, but events are still up there. And as this chart illustrates, it's the second most spent component of all of the different kinds of marketing activities that a corporation would do. And of course, this is just the average, because some companies spend even more. And in some cases, it's the number one, amount of component that they spend on marketing. So, events themselves can, continue to be a very important part of the whole B2B marketing, experience. And what's interesting about events is that really they are the best opportunity to collect real and immediate customer data. And so why is that? When you go to an event, when people experience events, or even when the company hosts an event, they provide many, many different touch points around that event where attendees, sponsors, and exhibitors interact with that event. So that carries through from the agenda with all the various sessions and activities that happen at events to interactions that attendees might have with sponsors to interactions that attendees might have with each other. Those provide opportunities for many different ways that this captive audience located in the same place at the same time can have with each other. And out of all of those different activities and touch points, those are the things that create the best opportunities for learning about the interests and what each individual attendees are interested in. And so things like event apps are able to capture and collect what people are doing and how they're experiencing your event, which then leads to the data and the knowledge that we were talking about in terms of really personalizing customer experiences. And perhaps one of the really, I think, great examples of how companies can leverage this is knowing about a company, Salesforce.com. I'm sure we all know about this company. What's interesting about them is that due to the way that they've operated marketing, they've become the fastest growing cloud company ever in the world, and that's a really really successful result. But what's interesting about Salesforce is the way that they leverage events to achieve that success. And if you've been around Salesforce, you know that Salesforce really is a big proponent of events, and they have an annual event called Dreamforce. In the most recent time, they had over 170,000 people in San Francisco for that event where they brought together their customers and partners and prospects and really enlivened the whole experience around their products and services. Now, what's interesting about Salesforce is actually the way that they use data and to really move people through their customer funnel. And what they do is that they try to track as much about the attendee activity as they can, and their goal is that within 48 hours they're going to use that information and they're going to craft the best follow-up for each and every attendee and figure out the best way to follow up with them and get them to the next step in the customer journey, be it telling them about a specific product that they might have expressed interest in, or upselling an existing customer to some new products that their company is offering. So they're really in advanced stages in terms of how they look at data to understand and craft the best follow-ups for each and every attendee. And that's an example of how companies can really use event data to build better relationships with their customers and prospects. And I'm sure at all of our companies we wish that we could be doing as well as what Salesforce has done, especially in the area of events. And of course, I think that the downside of also this is if one does not look at and take advantage of the data that is available today, that there is this risk of not getting the value that events can create. And so we have this concept of event death, which is coming from the idea of really unknown or marginal event ROI. And how does that happen, right? So corporations today, sponsors are looking at how they can get ROI from all the areas where they're spending their money. And so when attendees go to events and they're not getting the value out of them, they're not being followed up in the right way, they're gonna lose interest, or the company that brings those attendees here are not gonna have the opportunities to follow up with those attendees as best as they can. And the same things would happen with the sponsors and the partners who come to those events as well. If they don't, get the leads that they're there, for, they're going to stop coming. They're going to, plan their own events as well and try to control how they're going to, spend those event dollars, better in some other places. And so what starts to happen is this kind of downward spiral where sponsors lose interest, and that has an impact on attendees not having the best experience. And so and insights into what parts of the events are resonating, then really start to suffer a decline. And none of us really want that. And we want our events to be vibrant, and we want more importantly the ROI from that event, from those events to really be there. And so what we want to do is to draw an analogy today in terms of what can happen in the digital world versus what can happen with events. So in the digital world now, marketing practices have moved, in very advanced ways to where you can really track your customers' journey the moment they enter your website. So there are lots of tools today that can essentially follow your users once they enter. They can also, track what touch points that user has had with your company, whether they've come and interacted with your website, they got this, particular email, and they opened an email from, the various campaigns that you might have run, and so you can really form a pretty good picture of how that user interacted with your company, and again, to know what their interests are, so that you can again kind of have the best conversations with them. The issue with events today is that you might know who has registered for your events, but it really becomes a black hole in terms of how those attendees interact with your event the moment they check into your event. And what are their interests? What among the many things that they can be doing? It's very hard to track that today. And why wouldn't you want that? Because of the incredible time that they're spending, the incredible amount of money they're spending. That's really valuable data. And so what we argue is that in the way that customer journeys on digital assets are important, customer journeys also on events are important as well. So we have this concept called attendee journeys, which is the idea of bringing that concept of the customer journey to events. And the idea is that there isn't necessarily just one attendee journey, just like there isn't one attendee experience, right? It's being able to capture each individual attendee journey, each individual set of touch points, and understanding how that attendee is interacting with your event, and again gaining knowledge about them in terms of their interests and crafting the best ways to follow up. And what does that consist of? We have this concept of the attendee journey record, which is a much fuller profile, if you will. You can understand it in that way, which allows attendees to really understand, or allow you to understand what attendees are doing. So it goes beyond simply their name, their role at the company, to really the activities that they have at your event. So things like sessions that they've attended, people that they've talked to, and in some cases, some of these people are influencers that you might be interested to know about, to understand who you can influence in order to better move that customer or prospect along the journey in terms of converting them to a customer. So it's really about providing or having a much fuller picture that can be integrated with the rest of the information that you have about that attendee to better understand how to sell to them. And so, our company is certainly very dedicated, towards, providing, much higher signals around what happens with attendees around or within events, so that companies can do a much more effective job in terms of, again, following up and moving customers and prospects through the sales funnel. So some key takeaways. If you're in an organization, whether you're in a corporate setting or you're in an association and you're looking to basically convert more customers, the view is that knowing your customers and personalizing follow-ups is crucial and even expected these days, and that understanding the attendee journey through events is critically important to that whole process. And while you might develop a lot of data around how those users are, interacting with the rest of your marketing mix, the events today still represents largely a black hole. And filling in that black hole with information, with knowledge about the attendee journey, is really going to give you a 360-degree view, to how your customers or prospects are interacting with your organization. And in doing so, events, they don't have to be this, activity with, let's say, marginal value, or to put it more positively, there's an opportunity for events to become an even more important and strategic part of your company's marketing strategy. And so that's the whole idea around, the social economy, is leveraging the knowledge that you develop, through events with your customers and prospects, and putting them into very clearly defined profiles about them, so that you can, have the best conversations and develop the best relationships with them. So thanks very much, and we're certainly open to questions at this point.
Thank you, Eric. So yeah, just continue to put any questions right there into the chat box. So we've had a couple questions come in. So the first one is, what are the key components of the technology that I should be looking at to capture this customer journey information?
Well, Presdo is certainly in the business of, creating some of these technologies and some of these tools that allow, companies and associations to, develop more knowledge about their attendees. But I think one of the important things is to make sure that when you deploy this technology, that attendees and sponsors and exhibitors are really using them and really taking advantage of them, because in doing so, that's where the technology can learn a lot of data, right, about the activities and the interests that each of the event participants has. So you have to make sure that the tools that you put in front of them get used, and most often what that means is developing a rich space within apps and these technologies that make it very interesting for them to interact. So making sure that the agenda that's in the apps, making sure that the attendees and their profiles are all loaded in there. Those are very important things. And so certainly companies like us really try to make those tools as rich as possible, and also make the tools most importantly very easy to put that information in there, very easy to set up that information and to update that information, so that it provides a rich space for attendees to not only interact with the content, but to interact with each other. So I would say those are some of the things that you really want to look out for when you leverage technologies such as this.
Okay, perfect. Another question we received: I would like to know more about how complicated it is to integrate this information from registration all the way to my Salesforce database.
Yeah, that's a great question. So certainly the registration system today, which is ubiquitous, and there are many solutions for this, is the starting point for capturing the profiles and the attendee journey, if you will, for all of your different attendees. And there are definitely systems out there, ours included, that make it very easy to to integrate those registration systems into these apps, so that you can start creating a trail around individual specific user profiles, all the way through that event experience. So that can be done with a combination of either very simple spreadsheet imports to pretty good API integrations where the synchronization can happen in real time. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is that you want to get this information out of these apps and back into your CRM system. So if you're using Salesforce or Marketo or Eloqua for marketing automation, there's a set of integrations there too that allow you to feed that information about the attendee journey back into those systems so that you can develop a complete and coherent picture of the attendee journeys that your attendees are having. And so it's important to look at integrations kind of coming in and going out. And those integrations are certainly very easy and doable today with the right focus on those things. And certainly, as you're using this technology, you should expect to see and have those things work for you.
Okay, and then one final question. Capturing this kind of data seems to be very valuable, but is it expensive and hard to do?
Well, it's. I think it goes back to the question of value, right? I mean, there is some cost associated with it, but you want to look at the value that it's going to bring to your company. How much is it worth if you can even incrementally be able to close more customers by having this data at your disposal. And so being able to look at how much better you can do in terms of the business side and the ROI side or the ROO side is I think where really the the question is going to be. So if as a company you're making deals that are in the millions of dollars per customer over the lifetime of that customer, or maybe your average deal size or customer lifetime value is smaller than that, but you're able to incrementally do better in terms of developing business, then the relatively low cost of doing the integrations and hooking that up is going to be definitely worthwhile. And in most cases, the upfront cost is a little bit higher because of the initial setup, but after you've set things up, then it's almost autopilot, and the costs really become marginal while you're still reaping the benefits of the incrementally better value you're getting from these integrations. So I would say that's the way that to look at the cost side of being able to integrate this data and having the information flow between the various systems.
Okay, great. So if there's no other questions, I think that we'll stop the webinar here. If you'd like to see this particular webinar again, we will have it up on our YouTube channel by next week. I will be sending everyone a thank you email for attending. So if you think of a question later, just feel free to reply and I'll get that to Eric. And next Friday, we will be having a 30-minute webinar giving you a high-level overview of everything about the Presdo event app platform. So whether you've been a long-term client of Presdo for years or just checking out for the first time, we'll be able to show everyone our latest and greatest features. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and we hope you have a great weekend.